Okay, so we have the Game of the Year nominees. We have several categories. Maybe in the future we'll do like as we get closer to it, we'll do a podcast for just going through all of the categories because there are a lot. There are a lot of categories to go through here. But Game of the Year, we have Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, which we'll come back to, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Jordan. What's the last one?
Did you already say Ghost of Tsushima?
I did.
Okay. The Last of Us 2.
The Last of Us Part 2. All right.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It deserves to be up there in the conversation. It's just not my choice.
What do you guys think about the Game of the Year nominees here? And then, you know what we will do just for fun? We'll go through and make a case for each one of these, why it should be there.
Yeah.
Can I get Hades?
Okay. What do you think of the lineup here? Are we missing anything?
Yes.
Okay, Nate, what are we missing?
I would replace Doom Eternal with Ori Will of the Wisp.
You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. Yeah, I am. I'm okay with that.
So
I'm okay with Ori going in there.
Eternal
Would you replace would you replace Doom Eternal or would you replace Hades?
I think
okay with
Hades
Hades
earned
either.
its spots.
Yeah,
I think Hades earned its spot.
Hades reminds me of when Celeste got nominated. Like Celeste was like a really good game. Everyone knew it. Everyone talked about it, and they actually put it in there. And I didn't think they would at the time. So I'm glad they also went as far as Hades.
But is Hades that great, or is it only because it just blew up in popularity so quick?
No, it really, dude. I hate roguelike games. It's the only roguelike game that I actually like that I've gotten through. That's how.
That's just a general question. I haven't played the game. I don't know.
It made me.
It's a really good game.
It made me play and like a genre that I hate. I hate roguelike. I don't like them at all. And that's the only one that that's the only roguelike game that I finished the run. The only one in my life that I've ever finished run was Hades because it's honestly that good.
How many hours you got in that game, Evan?
I'd have to look it up. It's not a lot. It's not as many as you'd think because I cleared it really quickly the first run through, and then I just kept
playing on Switch.
I'm playing it on PC, dude.
Oh, okay, I don't know. I got on both. It does cross save. I don't know.
I do.
Yeah, it's
did they update it? I think they updated it.
45 hours total for the clear that I did.
I think I know what the upset win is at the Game Awards. I think there's a high possibility that they're going to give it to Animal Crossing.
All right, so we were going to get to Animal Crossing because this was an interesting.
That's exactly what would happen.
100%. That's like that's the big upset. That means no one can yell about it. Like, listen, this came out right at the start of the pandemic, and everyone bought it. And everyone.
See, that's the thing. If you want to look at Game of the Year as the most important game of 2020, Animal Crossing wins. Animal Crossing came out at the start of the pandemic, right when the quarantine hit, and it was an escape for so many people to feel like they could socialize through the game with friends and such. So, like, probably really the most important game of 2020 is Animal Crossing. And some will disagree with that, but no one can really downplay the impact it has had to everything that happened this year.
I just want to see what happens to the audience.
You want to see what happens?
I just want to see what people do online after that. Just the arguments that happen.
Think about it, it's the best. It's like the best-selling first-party game of the year. It might be. It might be the best-selling game of the year. I'm not sure. It might be. With how many it's sold since it dropped, it's
right under what, 30 mil?
I mean, it's gonna roll through the holidays and probably cross 30 million. Let's be real here, because
what is Last of Us and Ghost sold?
No,
I don't think it sold 30 million.
I think
Ghost just hit 5.
5, sorry.
Ghost just hit 5 million. Sony hasn't given us a new figure for
Last
part
of Us
2.
I think it's 7 million plus from what I researched.
Yeah, those are two.
No comparison.
Ghost is a new IP, so that's the one thing I like about Ghost. It's a new IP on that list. That's cool to see that from Sony. But Animal Crossing, it is interesting, Nate, because you bring up the idea that it's almost like blurred into real life a bit for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a major release for the year. Look at the sales, but just look at the social impacts it had. I mean, it was even used for presidential election. The Biden camp had an island.
Point. Oh yeah, you know what was really interesting? I was looking at on Twitter at the time. I think when it like a week after it came out or something, and I was seeing people like meet up in Animal Crossing and like hang out. Like that, like it was like regular life for them in Animal Crossing. I was like, oh wow, yeah.
You couldn't do it because of real life, so they were meeting up in Animal Crossing. And again, I ordered the game. It got trapped in Amazon.
Did you wait, hold on.
You never got it, did you?
I never got it, and it still says it's in transit, and they never charged me.
All right.
You couldn't experience the joy of going to 19 birthday parties this year in Animal Crossing.
No, instead I had to watch all the cars drive by my area beeping the horns, and I'm like, what's happening?
That's fun too.
Yeah, we had.
Not when it involved cop cars and like fire trucks. You didn't know what the hell was happening. You thought like your neighborhood was like.
We had a talk show. We had a
fire.
talk show come out of this thing.
Yeah, Gary Whitta had his what was it, weekly talk show.
Yeah, I saw Brian Altano on Twitter mention that he finally got to meet back up with Max through that. I was like, yeah, that really is like that like blurring of real life right there. If you're meeting back up with people you haven't seen in like a month or two, and it's just Animal Crossing. So that is an interesting bit there, Nate. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think that like it's really I think the underdog that people are going to overlook. The Animal Crossing has a really high chance of just sweeping that category.
I'm okay with Animal Crossing winning.
I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter anyway.
I mean, this is everything, Jordan. This is everything.
This is nothing. I don't care. You listen. I hope they give it to Jump Force.
I heard this was the Oscars, so.
The picks are really good. I don't have a problem. Last year, I was clowning the picks so much. I felt that they did a horrible job. This year, there's still some problems, but I think that for Game of the Year, I think they generally did a pretty good job with Game. I don't think it was too bad in terms of things. Maybe Ori could have been on there, or Half-Life Alyx. Some people.
What are the chances? Wait, what are the legit chances of Final Fantasy taking it?
You mentioned. Wait, what did you? Oh, you mentioned fighting game nominee of the year, Jump Force. Sorry. Go ahead.
Fighting game nominee of the year, Jump.
I would have put that on the box, by the way, if I was them. They released it on the Switch. I'd be like, putting this nomination.
Game of the year, Jump Force.
Nominee.
Thank you very much,
Jordan. To answer your question, I think Final Fantasy has a legit chance of getting it.
Do you think it has a pretty high do you over let's say the top? I think the top 3 picks are Ghost, Last of Us, and Animal Crossing. Like they're the highest probabilities. Do you think it has a substantial chance, like equal to those or better?
No, I don't think it has. It's on that level, but
worthy of the Game of the Year nomination.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been surprises, right? Like, Game Awards is always something that comes out of left field. And look, if Final Fantasy VII Remake won, I think people would be generally pretty okay with it.
Yeah, I honestly think anything on here that wins, I think people are going to have a pretty okay time with. Like, there's not going to be too much upside. I do think the biggest discourse, though, is if Last of Us takes it, and we're going to start that whole conversation that we had throughout all the beginning of the year leading up to that game resurface. Other than that, like even Hades, like I think people would be like, yeah, okay, and I think a lot of people would discover it because of that too.
Hades is like the underdog story here.
Yeah,
it's this indie game that's like it found its way into Game of the Year. It's like Celeste, like I said, and I think if it won, people would be like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Sure. I mean, it was nominated. I think 7 or 8 nominations.
It has the second most nominations behind Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, the game really is amazing, though. Like, the story is also surprisingly good. I didn't expect the story to be really good in the game, but it's really good. The voice acting solid.
Supergiant does that with pretty much all their games. If you haven't,
it seems like it's better than Bastion and better than Transistor.
The trick was the twist in Bastion, the way the narrator was playing into it. Like, they couldn't do that again, and that was probably one of the top tier storytelling moments for me in all of their games. But then Transistor, a lot of people actually didn't like the story as much. It felt like less than. But yeah, this one definitely does it really well, though.
I think also the Greek mythology helps out because everyone pretty much likes Greek mythology, right?
With the hints of all mythology being involved, which was kind of cool.
So it's something that you instantly recognize. Oh, okay, yeah, Hades. Okay, yeah, Athena. Okay, you instantly Zeus. It's right there. You already know all of them, and then they have their own personalities per each of the gods. So it's like, okay, like you feel like you already know what's going on, but you're hearing them for like the first time in a new, different type of way. So that's what the story for me, at least. I was shocked because these road games, like the story's never really that great. I played a lot of them. They don't feel that compelling to me, but this one just kind of just said, everything was really good in this game. I mean, I don't really have any complaints about Hades at all. I can't think of anything that I don't like about the game outside of me getting pissed off when I die on a run. That's about the only thing.
The trick is to not die. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Don't get hit. That's the trick. I'm trying. I completed a run. I'll get a second run going with the sword, so I'll do more.
You got a few ahead of you. Yeah.
let's annoy some people and pick a winner here. Okay. All right.
I mean, we just spent like a solid 5 minutes basically saying Animal Crossing was
defended all
going to
these
be the
different ones.
winner.
No, everyone has to pick one winner and attach their name to it. Okay.
So who you think is going to win, or who we want to win?
All right. Let's
Who
do
you
both.
want?
Let's do who you think's going to win and who you want to win. Let's do both. Just outright. Okay. Let's start with Jordan.
I think Animal Crossing is going to be the ultimate winner. I would for my personal one, I'm doing Ghost of Tsushima. It's the one game this year that I attached myself to the most time I put into a game, platinumed it, loved every second of it, the lore, the characters, the story, everything about that game I absolutely loved. And I can't wait to play through it again now on the PlayStation 5 and do New Game Plus. So yeah, I'm attaching myself to that. That's what I want.
Okay. What about Evan?
I think I want to say it might be a little surprising because Sekiro won last year. I think not necessarily because of the thematics, but I think Ghost might win this year as well. As kind of like one of those first outings. I would personally want probably, I mean, the only one I've played on it that didn't actually like come to hate over time was Hades. So
come to hate over time.
Dude, you walk into that soccer field you built in Animal Crossing for the 5th time and realize you just wasted your time building something that's unnecessary. Like you're just like, I can't do this anymore.
Let's go over to Ryan.
I'm torn. I don't know. I think Ghosts. Well, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I mean, I have to be that PlayStation guy, right? Like Last of Us Part 2 and Ghosts.
You only have 3 options to choose from.
I know, dude. But you know what? The Animal Crossing is a great point. That was the creature comfort that this year needed. I don't know if it's enough though to really, you know.
Which one do you want to win?
See, I don't really have a preference on what I want to win.
Okay.
But thinking about what will win, I think everything actually deserves to be there. If we're really arguing that, I think everything earned its spot. Of course, Part 2 is going to piss people off, but you know, if it happens, it happens. I think any choice would be good, but I think I would actually like to see Ghost win. That really surprised me because I was covering that game right up until it came out. And the big concern for a lot of my viewership was we haven't seen enough of this game right up until it came out. You know, the most we ever saw of it was a state of play like a few weeks before it came out. And then it turned out everybody loved it. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was surprised too. And then you had Legends come in, that update for multiplayer, which was totally strange. We didn't see that coming, and then that worked out well too. So I think I'd actually like to see that one. But between that and I'm somebody that did enjoy Part 2, I'd be okay with saying that game win.
I think there's legitimate reasons why it should win as well. Like again, I'm someone who doesn't love everything about that game, but it's the one game this year that I also have not stopped thinking about because of the story elements and everything about it, you know. So.
Right. I didn't play enough of Animal Crossing. I didn't play enough of Hades, but I know they're great. They're definitely great. I just can't reasonably say which one I want to win, but I think Ghost would probably, and I think it does have a really good shot.
Okay, very nice. And then MVG.
I think Last of Us 2 will win. And I want Last of Us 2 to win the game.
MVG is right in there. I like
wow,
it.
you would say that.
Well, hold on. And so I played and finished Doom Eternal. I played and finished Ghost. I played and finished Last of Us Part 2. Haven't played Hades yet, but I am planning on checking it out. I played and finished Final Fantasy 7. So I do feel like I am, have some say in what I think was the best game that I played. Look, was Last of Us Part 2 the perfect game? No, absolutely not. There was definitely some issues with it. My biggest issue with the game was that the length of the game was too long. I feel like they could have probably knocked off 5 hours of that game, and it would have been.
I couldn't believe how long it was.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe how long it was.
It has like 3 endings. You're like, okay, this is the end. Here's 5 more hours.
It was a grind. But if you look at the other games, they were all a bit of a grind as well. Like Ghost was a great game, but come on. I got a little bit of that fatigue, during parts of that game where it's like, I'm looking at the map and there's just so much going on. Doom Eternal was, I mean, that wasn't a massive game. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I mean, there was that one scene where you're like literally going through that map for like 5 hours, right? Just to finish that one section of the game. So for me, I think Last of Us Part 2 was probably the standout. To Jordan's point, it's one of those games that we haven't really stopped talking about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I think most of the people that are voting for this are probably feeling the same way. So that's what I think is.
I think that's an important thing in art, to have is, whether you like or dislike something. If it's able to evoke that emotions and discussions this long after it's come out, and probably for many years after, I don't think we'll ever stop seeing videos dissecting and analyzing what The Last of Us 2 was and their thoughts on it. So if anything, that's the biggest credit I can give to that game. Is that it's a true piece of art, whether you like it or dislike it.
I'm gonna be honest, I forgot Last of Us Part 2 came out.
That's fair.
I kind of did. I really did until Jordan, you told me about a video that came up about kind of going over its plot. I was like, wow, that game really came out. I think it's because of everything that's going on this year. That feels like it was like a year ago that game came out. Like I don't know if that's just me, just because of how long this year feels right now.
Yeah,
it does feel further away than it actually is.
Yeah, it feels like it was so long ago, and I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, Doom. I told you I forgot about Doom Eternal because that just came out forever ago. Feels like.
I think Ski Sniper got snubbed, but that's just me.
Well, Nate bought 12 copies.
Nate tried so hard to get it in there, man.
He pushed it so much
this year.
Okay. Among Us is up for an award. I didn't even come out this year.
OJ, what do you think?
I think Last of Us Part 2 is gonna win. If you follow any of the people that are on this board, I think it's very clear that Last of Us Part 2 is gonna win. I think it's almost I would be shocked if Last of Us Part 2 did not win. Based, if you read all the reviews, everybody says it's fine. They don't have a problem with it. They all love the game. It was the best. I think it's the best reviewed major game of the year.
Yeah.
If I'm not correct, it's the best reviewed major game of the year. They didn't have all this SJW, whatever type of stuff. That was a controversy. They didn't think that. They're the ones who were voting. So, I mean, we get the vote. We get a little bit of a play into it, but not really much. And they're going to vote for, I personally think they're going to vote for The Last of Us Part 2. So I think it's going to win pretty easily. In terms of who I want to win, I mean, either one would be Final Fantasy VII Remake or Hades would be fine with me, which, either one of those two games.
What about Nate?
I think Hades wins.
Oh, wait, hold on. You're like the indie guy, though. Okay,
what?
I get it.
I think Hades wins. And to like Mike's point, I think every game up there deserves their nomination. There's really none of the group that I specifically want to see win. Each game did its thing well, and they earned their nomination. So, I don't think I can really pick a particular one. I mean, my choice for Game of the Year, if I had to choose out of my own personal playlist, would be Ori. I think Will of the Wisps was one of the best games I played this year, but it's not one of those nominees. So I think Hades ends up winning just from, there's a lot of conversation still around that game. Some people say, oh, is it recency bias? It's not. The game just happens to be outstanding.
It's been in early access for a while.
It's been in early access. A lot more people got access to it now because of the Switch. And it's selling well. People playing it are loving what they're playing. So there's a lot of conversation. And I think the judges are going to give Hades the votes to push it over that edge and give it the win. I mean, I don't know what game I would pick personally from that list for my game of the year.
If they were like, you got to vote, you're part of the panel, like voting for it,
then I would vote for Hades.
Okay, I mean, there you go.
Nate, you brought up recency bias. I think that's a really good point. Like the timing of the game that you bring out really does come into play. Like, what if Doom Eternal came out, 2 weeks ago? Would that feel different to a nomination? Because it came out such a long time ago. Like you said, John, I mean, we barely even remember that game came out.
That happened with God of War. Like when it was God of War versus Red Dead Redemption 2. I remember I was sitting there, I was like, are people going to remember how good God of War was? Because it came out in February, right? That year. It didn't
happen last year.
Yeah, last year Sekiro was the oldest on the list, right?
Yeah.
Sekiro won.
So, but God of War won that year, and then Sekiro was that. So it is weird because we think of that, but I guess because the judges sit down and they look at it, I guess a lot harder. I don't know.
Doom and AC came out the same day.
Yeah. So Okay.
You know what? Comics 935 brings up a good point. Sayonara Wild Hearts should be game of the year 2 years in a row.
Oh gosh.
Just
All
under
right.
Ski Sniper.
Whoa, we cannot put those two games in the same category.
What about Jump Force? They got DLC this year, right? We put the DLC in there.
They put it on the Switch at some point, right?
So, all right, Nate, you said you would have taken Doom down for Ori, right?
Yes.
Okay, I also don't think Doom should be on Game of the Year list.
Oh, you guys.
And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why, okay? Here's why. All right, here's why. I think they missed out on a massive opportunity here for VR.
I was going to say Half-Life Alyx, I think,
Alyx
had a good shot of being on there. But you know what? It's just how many people could play it?
But that's the issue we're running into right now is not enough people play it. But like, if you put it in, if it got in the Game of the Year, like enough people had played it, and because it's a game that people like stop playing VR, like they walk away from there like that was amazing. That's
so
like
now
that's
y'all
the
like
VR experience.
VR.
But
I
you get
talked
what
about
I'm
VR
saying?
for years.
Can I play it on the Quest? Is there any way for me to play on the Quest?
I don't know. You know what? I have to look at. I don't think so.
Oh.
I think you need a PC obviously to play it, and like if you had the cable, you could hook it in and play it on your.
The problem with
computer.
Half-Life Alyx is they should have included a mode where you could have just played it with a mouse and keyboard. Like I think that really limited it because it just.
There's a mod for it, but like
but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah, I know what their mistake was. They didn't put it on PlayStation VR.
Yeah, I mean,
that would reach more people, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
Like Evil 7, you could play it with VR or without VR or just regular. And I think if you offer that, I think that really would have helped its cause.
Well, let me ask you this: if a Half-Life game that is actually really good cannot get VR into the Game of the Year discussion, will it ever get into the Game of the Year discussion?
Yeah, eventually.
It's too early.
When the only option is VR gaming, it'll eventually.
I mean, it's
if Cyberpunk mastered a VR.
All I know is somehow Jeff managed to get Death Stranding in Game of the Year last year. He couldn't get Half-Life Alyx in this year. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Death Stranding was in VR.
I wonder how.
Place last year. That was a great
Death Stranding was a good game.
How did it get it? I wonder how. Goodness gracious.
It was a good game.
But Half-Life Alyx is a better game.
So I wasn't here for any of that those conversations between everyone, but I do enjoy Death Stranding. I
thank you.
Played through the whole game.
Death Stranding is a good game.
Ryan, did you think that it deserved the Game of the Year nomination last year?
No, and I'll tell you why it didn't, because it's just too. I get why people would hate it, and you hate it no matter if you like it or hate it. You hate it the first hour. It's deliberately not very fun, but if you stick with it, it might work for you. I know that's like such a
deliberately not fun. It's deliberately not fun.
Right. Like I started playing it, and I don't know, you just like get into it right away. Oh, let me pick up this, let me pick up that. Then I picked up too much shit in the first hour and I fell down. I'm like, what? Yeah, what is this? But for some reason, it just clicks, and for some people, it doesn't. I know that's
the story only really gets you understanding that the game starts off that way. And if you click with it, then it actually makes sense of why it's not fun, quote unquote, for OJ's. That game has to be fun to be enjoyable. Dude, not going to get in that argument again.
We need to go back and find
I like to have fun during I play a game.
We need to find a podcast for that. Do you remember that? When we all showed up? Do you remember we all showed up to the podcast and we were all like, I think I like Death Stranding. And then Jordan was like, I like it too. And it was this whole thing of everyone realizing that Death Stranding was actually like enjoyed by most of the people on the podcast.
Just literally go back 52 episodes. It'll be that one.
But it was not a better game than Fire Emblem, so it shouldn't have been there. So I look at this and I say Doom Eternal is not as good as Half-Life Alyx, so it shouldn't be there.
It just seems like every year there's always like one or two games where you're surprised that it's there and you're happy that it's there, but there's only a handful of spots to go around. So I feel like it was there. It wouldn't have upset people, but at the same time, you've got Hades, you've got Half-Life, you got a handful of games that would have made sense.
Yeah, it's like Hall of Fame voting. Here's your ballot. You hand it to all these outlets and the judges, and they have so many slots to fill. And something is just not going to make that cut. And Doom Eternal happened to make the cut over Half-Life Alyx. I mean, all we know, Half-Life Alyx fell, 2 shorts. 2 votes short.
What would have been? Did anyone on the panel play the game? Has anyone played Half-Life Alyx on the panel? Because I would love to play the game, but I ain't not investing in $500 for VR just to play it.
I played a little bit of it because they had it on display.
And I think the amount of voting people, reviewers, and whatnot probably didn't have the opportunity to play as much as just a regular game. And I think that's what ultimately.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem is the barrier to entry for it.
If Cyberpunk actually came out this year and on time, what game would have not made the list?
Doom Eternal. Yeah.
Okay.
We're all basically looking at Doom Eternal like.
Okay. That's what I was figuring. I just wanted to see what you guys mean.
So I think Last of Us Part 2 will win, and I want Ghost of Tsushima to win because I think it's a more complete game and I think it's also a better game.
I'd be happy with anything. I mean, I think the games. All of them have a really good argument to win this year. Like last year, there was Control, and everyone was like, "What? Why is Control in there?" This year, we don't really have any of that.
Yeah,
I think any game.
Yeah, it has been a year since.
We can't go back to Control. We can't do that again. But
I agree, man. This year, to me, if anyone would, any one of them wins, it's cool. It's cool. Whatever.
I just think Ghost of Tsushima is a more complete game overall. We now have a multiplayer for it. I think it actually introduced some new things in the gameplay versus Last of Us Part 2, where I felt the gameplay was very average. But the overall ability for Last of Us Part 2,
it was average. The gameplay?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's the best thing about the game.
I think that's the best thing about the game. I think the gameplay
is significantly better than The Last of Us Part 1. Like,
oh no, I just mean in general.
better.
I just mean in general. I didn't think there.
I would say the physics
that would put it above like what else was out at the time.
The physics of what they've accomplished in that game, the fact that enemies can hear you reload a gun or a dog can smell, like the stuff that they've been able to do technically in the game is the most impressive thing I've seen in gaming.
The AI and the stealth is phenomenal. It's there's some parts where it's maybe not the best, like shootouts, but when you're hiding and stuff like that, when they track you down, like that stuff is really good. And if you put on the harder difficulty, it's hell. Like it's oh my god, you've got to be literally solid.
It's literally chess, but with surviving.
Yeah, you've got to be solid snake because like I was playing a little bit on the harder difficulty, and you've got to be solid snake to get out of some of those situations. You get shot once, you're pretty much dead. I mean, it is. I thought the gameplay was so much better than Part 1 because I played it all like back to back, and I thought the gameplay was amazing. But I mean, I get it though if you don't think it's that great.
I think the ability to tell the story was better than the gameplay. I just don't know if the story was up to. Well, that's the problem. I don't think the story was great, but I think the ability to tell it. Really? The cinematography, the ability to tell the story.
The cinematography is great. I think the ability to tell the story was part of the problem. If they told the story in a better way, I think that story could have worked fine.
Well, that story, I don't know how well they're going to tell that story either way.
The pacing with that story is what was the detriment to the game.
The pacing was jacked. Abby barges in like the Incredible Hulk out of nowhere. She's like this juggernaut of a character that like, why is she so prevalent? Like out of nowhere. They didn't set it up. It's been how many years? They didn't set it up correctly. I agree. The pacing was horrible. They should have did some type of in-between DLC with Abby as a character, then it would have been a better.
No, I think there's a way to keep everything intact they did in that game and just rearrange certain ways they told it throughout the game. It shouldn't have been so juxtaposed, like here's this, and then here's 7 hours of this, and then 5 hours of this.
I just don't think it was as good as Ghost of Tsushima, basically. I think it was a better game.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that 100%.
That's fair.
That's all.
It's interesting what happened with the reviews of that game, though.
What's that, like, for Ghost or Last of Us?
Yeah, it's just I would have figured that it would be like a 90+ game, but I don't know what happened. I think maybe people thought it was too similar to Assassin's Creed or something. I'm not sure.
Maybe I don't know.
It's like better Assassin's Creed.
I know. I think it's a better Assassin's Creed as well. Me too. I'm with you there. So I was a little kind of shocked with because nobody thinks it's a low 80.
I think it's because it's an open world game. So there are people who probably see it as like that. It doesn't have the Ubisoft fatigue, which has gotten real bad now, but it still has that open world fatigue for some people at times. So I think that's what knocked it down a few points. But I think they took more chances at that game. And I also think it's if you look at it from I think overall the environments and everything, I think it actually looks better too. I know Last of Us has some ridiculous looking character models and all of this, but let's see. I think that's everything there for the Game of the Year nominations. Like I said, we'll probably do a video at some point or a podcast at some point, just going over all the categories. And Evan can tell us about the esports coaches. Hey, Evan's got it. Evan's got that on lockdown. We'll just go with what he says.
Who is the John Madden of esports coaches?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, who's the best esports coach, Evan?
Coach specifically? Nah, I'd have to look into it at this point because there's very few teams that actually utilize that properly. So
Sound like a bunch of Rex Ryans to me.
Oh boy.